All right, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Wayfind Marketing Live, and my name is Steve Phipps. I'm the president of Wayfind Marketing, and I'm the co-host here with Annie Laurie Walters. Annie Laurie, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to today's topic. All right, happy Friday, for our everybody. Viewers and listeners, and I'm not sure if everybody heard that. Have this pulled up so we can watch for comments on Facebook. And apparently I didn't have the Facebook page muted. So getting to hear
wait a minute. Is there an echo in here?
I know. It's about a 20-second delay. And so we are in a series right now called Navigating Opportunity. And for the past few weeks, we've been talking with different business owners and leaders about how they've been pivoting and changing their business. And today, kind of in the middle of this series, we're going to talk about how you as a small business owner or a nonprofit leader can use the power of story to navigate opportunities, especially as we get closer to 2021. We really have less than 10 weeks left in the year. And so what we want to do is we want to give you a framework. It's a 7-part framework that can help you create clear, more compelling messages to tell people what you do so they understand it and it helps them move forward and take the next step. Because really confusion is the enemy of clarity, and clarity is what people need in order to make good decisions, and the decision to do business with you or to contribute and give or be a part of your nonprofit.
And, something that I think has really elevated the importance of being able to do this well, honestly, is social media, because we're always telling stories. Everything we do is a story. On Instagram, what did you put in your story? I mean, the honing and cultivating your ability to tell a good narrative. That's another buzzword today, what the narrative is. And there's a reason for that. And that is how people are passing on their talking points, no matter if it's a politician or a business or just, the local mom at the PTA. Like, the ones who really get the narrative down are the ones that are making the difference. Those are the messages that are sticking with people. So I'm really glad we're talking about this. I think it's going to be really useful right now as people plan for the new year.
Absolutely. And, one of the interesting things about story, if you think about it, we all know somebody who's a fantastic storyteller. Maybe it's somebody in your family, maybe it's a friend. There's somebody that you probably know, you, our listeners, our viewers, who, when they start talking, you're listening, and most people around them are listening because they have a story that they're telling that's interesting. And really what story is it's just a communication device. And what a lot of people don't realize is that there is a structure to story. There's a universal structure that's been studied and documented. And we have the 7-part framework that we're going to walk through that simplifies it. And when you begin to understand what the structure of story is, then you can use that to communicate more effectively, like you said, on social media or sales presentations, in a proposal, on your website, in a conversation at a networking event. And that structure and that power of story makes it easy for people to understand, because our brains are just wired to understand story. And, you and I were talking about this just before we got started, but I know you said you've got some big plans this weekend, which revolve around story. So what is it you're going to be doing this weekend?
Yes. Well, my family has been eagerly awaiting the release of The Mandalorian Season 2. Star Wars family over here. And we finished watching that at the beginning of the year. So we've been really waiting for this one. But we were talking about Star Wars and how the Star Wars story, that storyline of good versus evil and the hero and the journey and the guide, Star Wars is just the easy example to look to make sense of what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Because really, when we think about story, we need to think about the structure of it. And again, as we unpack this, I think this is going to give you a reference point, and we'll give examples. So let's stick with Star Wars, because that's, most people are familiar enough with it that we reference characters. Hopefully they'll know who we're talking about. But if we go back to the original Star Wars, which of course is the pinnacle of the Star Wars universe, the main character, the hero of the story, is Luke Skywalker. And so the first part of the story structure is you have a character, you have a hero, and Luke is that hero. And now, and so let me make a note here too, a sidebar note. The framework that we're talking about is called StoryBrand. And StoryBrand is this framework, and it was developed by Donald Miller, who wrote a book, How to Build a Story Brand. Fantastic book. Highly recommend it. I'm a certified StoryBrand guide, so I've gone through the training. I'm part of a network of guides around the world who use this framework, and so we use this with our clients to help them develop messaging and content that's clear and compelling. And so the first part of this is the character. And so what do you think of when you think of Luke Skywalker? We think about him as the character, and your customer is the character. That's who we're talking about. That is the hero of the story. So, Laura, what are some of the things you think of when you think about Luke Skywalker? When you think about the hero, what are some of the things that come to mind?
Well, if I'm thinking of it just in terms of no prequels, I'm thinking of, like just this, he's the diamond in the rough. He doesn't know what he needs to know yet, but he feels inside that something needs to be different. Something needs to change. Something is stirring within him, but he doesn't know what that is. And he doesn't know how to take the next step.
And so if you take and translate what you just said into your customer has something they want. And sometimes maybe they're like Luke, they don't quite know exactly what that is. They know something is wrong. Maybe they know what the problem is, but they don't know what the solution is. And so what they want, every character, every hero has something they want. Ultimately, it's to resolve their problem. And so if you run an HVAC company, your customers probably are calling you because something's wrong with their air conditioning and they want you to fix it. And so what do they want? Well, they want their air conditioning to work because they want a cool house or they want a warm house in the winter. And so your character has something that you're here. They have something they want. Well, next is the problem. And, there's no good story without a problem. There are some movies that are out there that are just bombs because there's no clear storyline. There's not a single problem that people are trying to solve, that they're trying to overcome, or they have too many problems that they're trying to resolve. And so when you think about your customers, think about what is the problem that they're facing. And that's what you want to focus on. And so when we think about Luke, what are some of the problems that Luke is facing?
Well, I mean, in the purest form of that movie, his problem is that he got this droid that's got a secret message in it from a beautiful princess that he needs to save. So he doesn't know anything about it yet, but he has this knowledge. He has stumbled into something, and now he has this knowledge. So he needs to act on it.
Absolutely. And so there's a problem. There's a princess who's in distress, who is looking for help. And ultimately, Darth Vader and team are looking to, conquer the galaxy. And so Luke and Obi-Wan ultimately come together to try to battle against Darth Vader, the Emperor, to set things right. And so when we think about the problem, there's an obvious problem. So again, we'll just use the HVAC example because that's pretty universal. So the problem is air conditioner breaks. It's not working. So that's what's called the external problem. And that's the obvious problem that needs to be fixed. But then you think about people have emotions, they have feelings about that. And so when you think about your customer, you want to think about how are they feeling about the problem that they're facing, because the same part of the brain that makes decisions is the part of the brain that controls emotion. And that's why people talk about making gut decisions. It just felt like the right thing. Well, it's because it did. That's the part of the brain that controls all that. And so you want to think about, how does your customer feel? If you think about Luke was conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Luke in some regards was kind of whiny too. Um,
Yeah, he was.
and you know, he was impatient. He felt like he was ready, but at other times he felt like it was too much for him. And so there's all these different feelings. And when you think about your customers have feelings about the problem they're facing. So you want to understand what those are so you can speak to those. So for instance, if your air conditioning goes out, you're probably frustrated. You're probably anxious because you don't know how much it's going to cost to fix it. And so there's all these emotions that go on. And then if you go down a little bit further, there's belief, which is what's called philosophical. And we're not talking all, crazy philosophical stuff. We're just talking about, what does somebody believe? And so, well, in the case of an air conditioner, my house should be cool, or my house should be warm. My air conditioner should work. It shouldn't be so freaking expensive to get this thing fixed. There are different beliefs that somebody has. And so when you understand that, you can speak to that. And so, if we think about Luke, well, the core belief is that good should win over evil. And so we have a character who has a problem. And then the character then meets a guide. And so the guide is actually the strongest character in the story. And so the guide, when you think about the guide, they are the one who has a solution. They're the one who can help the hero overcome their problems. And so we think about Star Wars. Who would you say is a guide? Who is it that comes to Luke's aid?
Well, at first it's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it later becomes Yoda. I think it kind of depends on what part of that 3-part trilogy you resonate most with. You either are going to say Obi-Wan or Yoda, but they both
They do, absolutely. And sort of there's some overlap there, but Obi-Wan, when he exits, Yoda takes on that mantle. Well, in business, in marketing, your customers are looking for a solution. They need somebody to help them solve that problem. And so you, with your product and service, are the one who can solve that problem. So in the HVAC example, well, you're the one that can go fix the air conditioner or replace it or do whatever needs to be done in order to get it working. And so I think a mistake that businesses and brands can make here is they make themselves the hero of the story. And one of the ways that I see people do that is on their website, all they do is talk about themselves, how many awards they've won, how long they've been in business, information that's not necessarily relevant to the customer. And so if your brand is making itself the hero of the story, then you're going to miss out on opportunities, because when that person comes to your website looking for information, they're not looking for another hero. They're looking for a guide. And so it's important
to stop to think too. If you're making yourself the hero, what are you making your customer?
Yeah. And they're not in the story. And so, they want to know how you can help them solve their problems. And so if we think about the guide, so we have a character who has a problem, who then meets a guide. And of course, Luke meets Obi-Wan, or rather, I should say Obi-Wan finds Luke. And next, what happens is the guide has a plan. And this is where the guide is the one who knows how to be successful. They've been successful. They've helped others be successful. They've solved the problem. So your HVAC company, you've helped other customers. You've demonstrated the ability to solve that problem. And so your plan, there's a couple of different kinds of plans, but it's simply showing people how you solve their problem. How do they work with you? 1, 2, 3. and having that on your website. Have that in your sales presentations. Make it easy. Make it obvious for people as to how they work with you, what the process looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this is just what we're talking about is just building trust. It's establishing credibility. It's answering questions, because whenever somebody is considering buying your product or service, there's always a sense of risk. And the higher the cost or the investment, the longer the commitment, the more the risk, or at least the sense of risk. And so what you want to do is all of these things are to help lower that sense of risk so that they are interested in moving forward. Mm-hmm. And so with, we think about Obi-Wan, we think about Yoda, really the plan was to help train Luke to become a Jedi Knight so that he would ultimately be ready for his battle with Darth Vader. And so that involved training and Luke going to Yoda and training with him. And yeah, of course, if you've seen the movies, you know how that goes. Mm-hmm. So we have a character who has a problem, meets a guide, the guide has a plan. Well, next, if you think about it, in most stories, the hero doesn't necessarily always act on their own. And so they need some compelling. And so what we want to do now, what the guide does is they call the hero to action. Mm-hmm. They invite them to take the next step. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what does this look like from a marketing perspective? And Laura, you and I have talked about this a lot. What are some of the ways that you see businesses in a good way call their customers, call their prospects to act?
Sometimes it's just very simple. Schedule a meeting, schedule a demo, try it out for free for 30 days or whatever the case may be. It's just not assuming that they're going to pick up what you're laying down and going to go click your contact me button on the website. Like, it's just making the ask in the copy of the website and having it be prominently displayed in more than one place, so that as they take in the information you're providing, if, a lot of times once they've heard enough, they'll go ahead and click, schedule a demo or schedule a call or try it for free, like making sure that that's woven throughout what you're creating.
Absolutely. And those are all, excuse me, those are all great examples of a call to action. And, I like your point of, you want to be clear about it. You contact us is not a good call to action. Because there's not clarity on why they should contact you or what happens when they contact you. Whereas schedule a call or try it for free, schedule a demo, there's clarity around what happens next. And so the other thing, as you mentioned too, is repeat it multiple times. So put it on your website, put it on your homepage a bunch of times, run it throughout. And the other thing is, don't have a lot of different calls to action. I look at websites on a regular basis that will say that might have some specificity in what they're calling somebody to do, but there's 3 or 4 different calls to action on the homepage. And so it might be schedule a call, get a quote, get a free estimate, all of those things. It creates confusion, and a good guide makes the next steps clear. You don't create confusion. So check your website. Is it clear what you want people to do next? Do you have a clear call to action? Mm-hmm. Now, there's a second kind of call to action that's called a transitional call to action. And that's simply where you give people the option to sign up for a downloadable PDF, a free guide, an ebook, an infographic, a checklist, cheat sheet, something that people can give you their name and email address in exchange for. So they get content that's valuable. You get some contact information so you can begin nurturing them with email, start building that trust, and ultimately bring them back to the primary call to action. Schedule a call, start a free trial, schedule a demo, something along those lines. Okay, so we've covered 5 parts of this framework. And, ultimately, think about it. What happens if Luke fails?
Well, evil reigns.
Yeah. The Emperor, Darth Vader, rule the galaxy. And so every good story there's something at stake. There's something at risk. If the hero doesn't come through, then there's going to be a consequence. And of course, in the context of movies and stories, it's usually something catastrophic. So for your customers, you want to be mindful of and communicate what happens if they don't do business with you. What happens if they don't solve that problem? And part of the reason to do that is because you want people to, a couple things. One, you want them thinking about what happens if they don't solve the problem. But that also helps create some empathy, because then that lets them know that you understand the situation. You understand what's at risk. And so it also helps them understand what you're helping them avoid. Mm-hmm. And so it is important to talk about the problem. It is important to talk about what happens if the problem's not solved. Now, I think the description that I like when we talk about failure, what happens if you don't solve the problem, is use it like salt. And if you think about using salt in a recipe, if you use too little, then it's bland, doesn't have a lot of flavor. If you use too much, nobody wants to eat it. And having just enough means it's flavorful and it makes it better. Mm-hmm. Talking about failure, talking about what happens if people don't solve their problem is like that. And so, but it also, it helps people see what you're helping them avoid. Mm-hmm. Now, if we think about this by contrast, it needs to be consequences that are significant without being catastrophic. Because again, we want to think about that like salt in a recipe. But ultimately, what we want to do is we want to help them understand how we help them achieve success. And so if they solve their problem by working with us, following the plan, our product and service, ultimately, what does that look like? How do we make their life better? And so what ends up happening, what ends up happening with Luke and team at the end of the day?
Which day?
The end of the original trilogy. Yeah.
They keep the Jedi legacy intact. The Jedis live to fight another day.
Jedis live. Vader and the Emperor are defeated, and so the good guys win. And so at least for a while, there's some peace in the galaxy. And so your customers want to know, how does life get better if they do business with you? And when you communicate that, when you can share those examples and specifics, then that's going to help them better understand how you make their life better. And so when you put all of these elements together on a homepage or in a sales presentation or over the course of time on social media, what happens is you're painting this whole picture that somebody can understand. And so, again, just a quick recap of this. You have a customer who's the character. They have a problem they're facing. Well, you as the guide have a solution. You have experience. You have empathy. You can help them overcome the problem. And so you lay out your plan. And by following your plan, you call them to act. You invite them to take the next step. And in doing so, you help them avoid failure and experience success. And so as you begin to understand this framework, you can begin using this to create messaging that ultimately is going to help you communicate more clearly and win more business. Because at the end of the day, if you confuse, you're going to lose. And so if we go to the example of the HVAC company, just real quick. So the customer has a problem. Air conditioning's gone out. They're frustrated. They should be able to have a cool house or a warm house, depending on the season. You, as the HVAC company, have the experience. You understand. You've solved the problem for lots of people, and so you lay out the plan. Here's how we do business. Schedule a visit, come out, give you an assessment, we fix it. Well, then you invite them to take the next step. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and get that estimate together for you. Well, then as you communicate with them through your website, you're letting them know, hey, we know how frustrating it is when your house is hot and it should be cold. Kids are grumbling, your family's upset, it's hard to sleep at night. Those are all failures. So you're talking about what does it look like when the problem's not getting solved. But with us, we get it fixed quickly, so you can get back to enjoying your family, enjoying your home, and not sweating trying to get to sleep at night. And so a very simplistic run through that. But in doing that, you're inviting your customers in and you're making the story about them and how you make their life better. And so, this is a super fast run through of this 7-part framework. But Laurie, before we wrap this up, what parting thoughts do you have?
Well, I would ask a question of you and say, what or where would you put things like establishing your expertise? Because there is an opportunity to do that with, out making yourself the hero. And then secondly, where do you add things like a testimonial, like those sorts of things? How does that fit into this framework?
I would say, and I agree with you, absolutely, that there is certainly a place for you as the brand to talk about yourself. The mistake that a lot of brands make is they make the majority of the content about themselves. And so in answer to that question, as you know, so if we use a homepage as an example, if you lead out with how many awards you've won without even talking about the problem that your customer's facing, and if you haven't clearly told them what services you provide and what you want them to do, you're missing opportunities. You're missing the boat. So you want to put it in that context of, hey, we understand your problem. Here's what we do. And then here's why we're qualified to help you solve that problem. And if how many years you've been in business is meaningful to your customers, then great. Talk about how many years you've been in business. But if it's not relevant, don't bring it up. And so testimonials kind of fall into that kind of a flow where, again, there's a classic storytelling structure. It's problem, solution, success. Talk about the problem, talk about the solution. That can include how you're qualified, why you're qualified, using testimonials to prove that. And then ultimately, what does success look like in doing business with you?
That's good. Thanks. That's really helpful. Story is so easy to understand, but why do you think businesses struggle to embrace the 7-part storytelling framework into their own marketing message?
Well, I would liken the structure of story, learning how to use it, to learning how to play guitar. Learning the framework is like learning the basic chords that you can play. And with those chords, you can play any song you want, but the quality of the music that you're playing is going to be based on how much practice, how much skill do you have. And so most business owners are focused on running their business, and some naturally are inclined to telling stories. So some can pick it up just really without a lot of effort, but the majority are focused on running their business, serving their customers, creating a more profitable business, looking for how they can grow that business. And so a lot of anytime I sit down with an owner and talk to them about this, they understand the value of it. And one of the reasons why people hire us is because they see the significance of it, but they don't have the time to figure it out. And the other thing is, even if they are good storytellers, they're so close to their own story. They're so close to what's happening that it's hard to be objective. And so it's important to get a third-party perspective, somebody that's not as emotionally invested in your business as you are. And that's one of the reasons, even for us, where I'm not always objective about our own messaging. That's why I lean on you and other people in our team to give feedback and perspective.
Awesome. Thanks. No, those are really good additions to this conversation that I think are helpful as people are processing, how do I apply this in my own context?
Absolutely. And what I would mention too is that on our website, we do have a free guide If you go to the homepage, wayfindmarketing.com, scroll about 2/3 of the way down, and it's 6 ways that you win more business through your website. And on that guide, or in that guide, we talk about a lot of these story elements and give more specifics in terms of how to apply that to your website. So my contact information, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me by phone. You can also reach me by email. So steve@wayfindmarketing.com. And love to help you figure out your story and ultimately how to win more business with it. And so, well, guys, we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will have the podcast out by the first part of next week, if not sooner. The recording of this will be on our website, on YouTube, on Facebook, and LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us. Come back next Friday when we continue our Navigating Opportunity series and go tell a great story that's going to help you win more business. Have a great weekend, everybody.